It was a good season as far as we started knocking them down there pretty quick. I kind of got the ball rolling, and then things started happening fast, and we got to go on a lot of pack outs, and it got to the point where my fiance Lauren was like, you're seriously going to go again? And it's like, yeah, I got to go. It only comes around once a year.
I was like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp. With the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
All right, we're good to go. Mason, Dad, welcome back to the podcast.
Good being on.
Yeah,
Senior Mason.
definitely.
Well, to get started here, I got gifts for you.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
What do you got?
So I've got the new Mason Martonik hats.
Whoa.
So
sweet.
When you're asking Dad, should I put a hat on? I was like, oh, I got one for you.
Awesome.
So those
Sweet.
are. I was on the Maven website the other day, and I just saw there was a hat called the Martonik. They never even told me about it. That was on there, and that's when I talked to those guys. They said that's what they like to do is make it it's kind of a surprise to stumble upon it. So they name a bunch of hats off of people that they're friends with or whatever else. So
Real nice.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
So anybody wants to check out the Martonik hats, you can head to mavenbuilt.com and check them out. So I'm not sure exactly what makes it the Martonik hat, but it's got the big M on there.
Yeah, I was going to say it must be the M.
Not stand for Maven or anything.
No.
Mm-hmm. But anyways, so we're going through a long winter here. About ready to get out in the woods here soon, hopefully.
Yeah, it's been, I'm itching. Been actually doing some ice fishing for a change, and that's been taking care of some of the itch. Mason and I and Uncle Mike's gone a few times, and Kurt. And it's good because I get to talk about deer hunting, too, while you're fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, just last weekend, 2 weekends ago, we were fishing, and we found out that we were scouting the same spot.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
You two were?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I've been running some soakers there and haven't seen anything worth hunting. I haven't actually hunted it in probably 15, 18 years. But I always have a soaker in there, and nothing's got me excited enough to jump in there, but probably bumped into Mason when that does happen.
They must not be looking hard enough. Mason's poking around. There must be something.
I don't run cameras in there. I just shed hunt it every other year.
Well, I got to be careful what I talk about if I do film something in there.
Well, yeah. It's funny because you used to ice fish a lot when you were younger, but you haven't really done it much in a long time.
No, there hasn't been any ice. Or if there is ice, and if the snow's not of any amount, then I'd rather be out scouting in the woods. And it's just, there's not much out there as far as hitting the woods that everything's covered, ice covered, and deep snow, and I don't want to stress them out too much either, bumping them.
Yeah, not a good idea to get out there when it's been this cold and bad for them already and bump the deer around. But I mean, by the time this podcast comes out, it'll probably be the beginning of March. But the way it's looking, at least in our area, we're probably still going to have some snow into March.
Yeah,
I'm hoping by the time the scouting camp comes that we don't have any.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Because originally I don't remember the first year. I think it was in April. I put it in like mid-April, hoping there'd be no snow. We ended up getting snow then. And then the last couple years had been mild winters, and we were good in March. And then this year I'd do it again. It's the last weekend of March, so
Most years that's pretty safe, but you, up here you never know. You get a snowstorm all the way into May, really.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
We've had that turkey hunting before.
Well, we used to have that fishing derby in the pond. It was usually the third weekend of May, and at one morning we woke up, there's 5-6 inches of snow. But I mean, most of it melted by noon when you're having the derby start. But yeah, so it can happen into late May.
Yeah. No, That makes sense. I wanted to talk a little bit about, as we get in here, we're going to do 2 podcasts here, but with this one, I wanted to talk about you guys' last season. I haven't really caught up with either of you guys there from last hunting season, talking a little bit about it, some things that were learned, and talk a little bit about just scouting plans this spring. But it was funny. Mason, I've been getting some requests for a while about getting you on after shooting another really nice deer and earlier than normal in October, and you keep telling me, you're like, I don't have a whole lot of a story. so it's you're like, we're gonna have to do something. You're like, we can't do one just me and you because it's gonna be 10-minute long.
Yeah, it'd be pretty dry.
But we're gonna try to pull some more stuff out of you, because I know, even though the hunt was short, there's a lot more that goes into it, that I believe that there's more meat on the bone than you think there is.
Yeah, I'm just kind of sad you're not going through a big learning curve like the rest of us, dragging it out longer through the season.
Yeah, I've been there quite a few years in the past, so had a little baby this year, so it was getting close to baby time, and it was a good year to get one early for sure. So yeah. I was glad to be home. The girlfriend was glad I was home, so it worked out pretty good.
Yeah. You actually, this was a good year for you to tag out early.
Absolutely. And
you ended up with a big mule deer in Utah, and then also the buck in Pennsylvania, all within. Well, I guess the mule deer was back in August, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
So there was a little bit of time.
I was wondering why you settled for such a small whitetail here in PA.
Yeah.
Trying to get done early.
I do what I have to.
So we're taking votes here too on whether Mason's going to continue the streak of, I don't even know how many. I mean, he won't say it, but I think this is 5 or 6 over 140 in the last 7 years or so. So we're wondering if he's going to continue the streak now that he's a dad.
Could go either way.
I like we try to razz him up a little bit and get you worked up with it, and you always are just like, well, I don't know.
Yeah,
it could go either way.
Every season, it feels like it's not going to happen until it does, right? Just like anybody else.
So I guess to kind of kick it off here, Mason, going into this past season, what were some of your goals? I know the buck that you ended up shooting was one of your target deer that you were focused on, but how did you go into that? As far as, did you know about that deer for a long time? Did you use some of that historical knowledge, or what was kind of your plan going into the season?
So actually I was after a different buck when I started my spring scouting and summer scouting, and it was a nice buck, and through running cameras in the summertime, I found that there was another big buck, which ended up being the one that I got, that, they didn't typically run together, but their areas overlapped, and either one of them I would have shot for sure. And the day I got him, I was set up in an area which was kind of in between, where either one of them could have showed up,
Yeah.
So it was the first year in quite a while that I had more than one buck that I would have been pretty pumped to shoot,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it was a good year in general. I don't know if we'll see a year like that in a while, as far as, I think, a couple easy winners in a row. Yeah. There was a decent crop of good bucks this past season. Now, gun season, I've mentioned it here before, but killed a lot of deer, which kind of set it in this winter's rougher. So we'll see if there's what it kind of looks like there. But if you put that back on your head a little bit more, it'll just pick. Yeah.
And what you were saying about this rifle season with like a lot of deer got shot, we had phenomenal conditions for the first 2 weeks. The only 2 weeks of rifle that we have, right? And we'll get into it more during our shed hunting podcast, but pretty much every nice buck and up and comer I knew of all got killed this year. so this spring I'm really counting on finding something, just pulling something out of the hat, to set myself up for next season, because I'm starting out at ground zero.
Yeah, which that's kind of fun too.
Yeah, it is. It's fun, and it's you have a little anxiety about it too.
Yeah. But that was so, or I guess not directly towards you yet, but on Mason's count, what questions would you have with Mason trying to get some information out of him leading up to this deer? What questions would you ask with him?
Well, I guess your setups, based off of your, obviously you were filming them during the summer, that and another shooter buck, or for in your target bucks, but were you setting up where you were filming in the summer, or were you setting up based off a sign that you uncovered in the spring for him? Rut sign from the previous year, or what went through your thought pattern on the setup that you end up choosing?
So the setup where I got him, I actually didn't run any cameras there, but it was a spot I walked through during shed season, and there wasn't a ton of sign there, but just the way the terrain and the vegetation kind of set up, I know I've said it on here before, but I just had a good feeling about it, I wish there was a better way to describe it, and I'll talk about the terrain a little bit, but yeah, I didn't run no cameras in this spot, but it was pretty close to where I filmed them in the summertime. And when I filmed them in the summertime, I didn't get a lot of pictures of them. Mm-hmm. And actually, the last picture I had of them was probably the end of September, and it was, I think, 0.75 or 0.95 miles away. Mm-hmm. And it was on an opposite ridge, but, I knew in the summertime he's also on this ridge, just a half mile away. And so anyways, I guess I knew I was within the area that he should be in at some point.
Did you think it was a bedding area, or was it a less pressured area? What made you choose that ridge versus the ridge you were filming them on as well?
I would have hunted both ridges. This is just a spot that I just had a lot of confidence in, as far as just my experience before, seeing where big bucks end up, and where I found areas I found sheds in before, and areas I guess I've just found buck sign in. And not necessarily just buck sign as far as like big rubs and big scrapes, but just like areas that they kind of hang out in, almost like a bedding area. And I have no idea where any beds are close to this stand was, but it's just the kind of area that I find they usually hang out in. And actually, my dad was with me in the spring. We walked by this spot, and I said, this is where I find all my big bucks, is spots like this.
Yeah.
And he kind of blew me off, and I ended up shooting a nice buck there, right? So, but
he actually said it in that CVA film that just launched. So anybody listening haven't checked it out on CVA's YouTube channel, the latest film of ours about our family's deer camp traditions and everything, called Deer Camp, launched. But your dad says it at the very beginning when we're getting ready to do the first drive here in the basement of like, if you just want to pick the stupidest spot in the woods, go set up there and kill a buck. That's what Mason does.
But if you break it down, I think it kind of does make sense. And you were at the spot, so chime in if I miss anything.
Yeah, I'll add.
Well, what makes it a stupid spot?
You'll have to ask my dad, I guess. But probably that there wasn't really any sign there.
Yeah,
is probably why. But in the spring scouting, there was a decent scrape close by to where I was set up, and I mean it wasn't a big giant scrape. It was just a scrape, and I figured, kind of just looking at the way the land was and the vegetation, kind of guessing where they'd walk, and it's like I could just see a buck coming right out of here and crossing at this spot, And the morning I killed that buck, I walked over to where that scrape was the previous year, and it wasn't opened up yet. And actually, I hung a camera there the morning I got him, after I shot him, and the scrape was never really opened up this year.
Really? Yeah, because I hung that camera with you.
Yeah. But I don't know if the carcass there kind of screwed it up or what.
Yeah. So from my opinion, seeing the spot, it's definitely a spot that I would say 95% of people wouldn't have set up in unless you have experience from seeing deer. It's definitely like any of us that would go into an area, at least the way I believe it, it looks like a big buck spot, but you walk through it, it's like there's not really any sign. I mean, there was deer trails and stuff, don't get me wrong, but there wasn't these big rubs, or wasn't, like you said, the big scrape. I mean, there was that scrape that you were talking about that's nearby where a couple logging roads intersected. But as far as the way the terrain laid out, there was like that. It was right on the edge of the hill as it drops off. So think of where it drops off steep, and there's hemlock on the side, and then it gets up and a little bit of more of like the pole stand type of trees, thick but not like brushy thick. Just trees are close together. Difficult to shoot through. I gave you credit after seeing where you told me where you were at in the tree. I was like, I don't know how you got narrow through those trees, but obviously you did. But there was a lot of things that did line up there, but it's like almost kind of like stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. And one thing that we've mentioned it on here before with you specifically, but you get that feeling because you've seen it so many times. It takes like kind of stepping back and looking like you know it's a good spot before you know why it's a good spot. Mm-hmm. And even I think this is something really important for people to pick up on. You're like, I'm pretty sure this is an area bucks live and probably bed in, but I don't know exactly where they're bedding at. You've said that before. The one time you've said that, Johnny picked up on it and he's latched onto it. He's just like, Joe doesn't know where bucks bed all the time, and like I don't need to either. And you know how he latches on to certain things, but it's a good point of like sometimes you got to trust your intuition, and you only get that from experience with it. But there was, like I said, there was a draw that was coming up. There was the edge of the hill. There was the different vegetation break of the hemlock to the pole stand there. There was a lot of things that were happening when you look at it from the macro level if you step back and look at it. But when you're right there, it wouldn't be a typical spot you'd find someone's tree stand.
Yeah, and I would say it's all those changes is pretty subtle. And it was almost kind of like a point there too with the way the draw came up, but it's so gradual you don't even notice it. Where my thought setting up there was this, I was on the top of the hill, right where it rolls over, kind of like Beau said, and there was the most gradual, rounded, wide point you could think of. And same with the draw. The draw wasn't very deep at all.
No.
It was more like just a big impression.
It wasn't a big ditch or anything. It was just kind of a lower lying area.
Yeah, maybe like a 300-yard wide depression.
Yeah.
And maybe 200-yard wide depression, and that kind of filtered down into this hillside clear cut, right? And my thought going in there was, I could definitely see something in the morning hanging out in this clear cut and working its way up right past me, and that's exactly how it played out.
Yeah, and what was the date on that too?
I think it was October 18th.
Yeah,
18th.
Yeah, because that was a phenomenal. Those few days there, we had a cold front that was coming through. That was a phenomenal few days. I know that was your first day hunting, but I had been out the few days before that and had encounters with bucks, and it was like if you were tight to where they were living at, I think. And I know even from the Mountain Buck Monday stories that have been sent in, there was quite a few people killing deer that weekend, which that was a Friday that you had killed that deer. But I liked the spot a lot. No, we accessed it to get the deer out a different way than you accessed it in because we had to come, through that clear cut where you came in from the backside. I think your access was super clean too, which is something to note about that. Where you were thinking they were feeding that clear cut, coming back up, working their way around that subtle point and bedding somewhere on that knob, basically.
Mm-hmm. Was your access the easiest route in? I know what the answer is going to be, but
it's easy to get in there, but it's the longest route.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It's not like you're trudging through blowdowns or anything, but it's quite a ways in.
Yeah, and I know you pay a lot of attention to that with access as far as going in, and I've heard you, I've heard you talking about it with your dad and talking about it with us, and I was very surprised a lot of times when people say they're a few miles in somewhere, they're usually exaggerating a little bit. That was a true few miles in, and your access was I think over 3 or something that took you to get in there, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah, the shortest distance not always the best access, even though it might be easier.
Yeah.
You just got to definitely read the terrain like you did and make sure you're not going to disturb them on your access or blow them out of there.
And I'm guilty of taking risks in a lot of my spots too, as far as access goes, where there's spots that they're just hard to get into without getting busted. And sometimes especially during the rut, I'll take chances, and it's like, I just got to go for it, Yep. And I get screwed a lot of times where it happens a lot more than you'd think, as I don't bump any deer on the way in until I get right to where my tree's at. And right there I'm bumping deer. And it happens a lot, actually.
Yeah.
As far as morning hunts goes.
Yeah. Especially at that time in October too. It's not the rut, and it's they're more on a normal pattern of doing things. But you would, talk about that morning, just that day of the hunt, and you getting in there. How early did you get into your tree before it got light?
I don't remember, but I'd say 45 minutes to, I was in the tree set up probably 45 minutes to an hour before it got light.
Okay.
I like to get in early, just let things settle down, because if you get in there right at first light and something's close by and they hear you going up, you could booger it up. And you have the same chance if you do it an hour and a half before it gets light, but there's also the chance that, they're not at that point yet. I just think you give yourself a little better chance going in earlier, and I think they tolerate more before it gets light as well.
Yeah.
As far as sounds and seeing your headlamp, things like that, I think they tolerate it just a little better.
Is there a particular color of headlamp that you do use, or?
I typically just use white until I get to my tree. Then I'll switch it to red. Just I don't know why.
I will tell you why. And I didn't know this answer because I did the same thing until I was thinking about it. But the white light is so bright when you're trying to do things up close, where the red lamp is like, especially say you're putting your climbing sticks on the tree or something. For me, it's just, it makes it easier to be able to do that kind of stuff.
And you can kind of keep your night vision better too. And,
yep.
And it's not that I have night vision, but like if you go from a bright light to pitch black, you don't have anything. But if you go from a red light to pitch black or maybe gray light, you can definitely see better.
Yeah. Well, the deer aren't supposed to be able to see the red light as well.
Right.
But just curious what your entrance is like, under cover darkness.
And it depends on where I'm at too. Is where I was, where it was pretty flat. It was pretty flat my last 150, 200 yards in there. I'm not necessarily worried about something seeing my headlamp, where I've hunted areas where, I'm crossing pretty big open hillsides, and I know it's like, and if the leaves are off, it's like anything in this valley can see me walking through here with my headlamp right now. I'll use a red light on the way in at that point, but most of the time I use a white light.
Yeah, I do too. Could you walk by deer and they're just staring at you as you walk by on your way in, and does a white light spook? I'm sure it probably does, but you might have to go straight at them. I just like the brightness of a white light. I do try to go with red light, but it usually gets to where I start stumbling around a little bit, and maybe I just don't have the right brightness of a red light yet.
Yeah, and you're ending up getting hit in the face with sticks.
Yeah, I've been wearing safety glasses. I have. Yeah, I have been.
Yeah, I will say, you're obviously a very practical person, but we always make fun of you. We're doing deer drives, and you got your safety glasses on.
Well, those also have bifocals too,
so that helps you see your
phone.
I
can see my Spartan 4 Jap.
Yeah.
Yeah, those ones have bifocals built into them. So,
and that day, that was a wicked bad drive as far as how thick it was. The worst I've ever walked through.
Yeah.
By far.
But
that wasn't bad.
That was. We'll get to that in a little bit, but I want to go back to the light situation. So one about you're saying about it doesn't seem to, they'll look at you. I think exactly going back to what Mason says about being early enough, I think that makes the world of difference. Yeah. If you're there when it's dark, like it's actually black, dark, not starting to get gray light, those deer just act different. They'll tolerate so much more.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've put my white headlamp right on them, and they don't tend to or they might like stumble off a little bit. They're not really spooked to be able to do so. And also, like, the white light allows me to see where I'm stepping at, like you said, not stumbling, not falling. You can go a little bit quieter, sneaking through. And I do the same thing as switching to the red light when I get to the tree. Now, I will say I got a new headlamp this past year. It's a Peaks one. I can't remember what the name of the model is, but I was just trying it out. A buddy of mine works over there at Peaks, and he said, "Hey, will you test this out and see what you think?" And it was the brightest red light I've ever had that I could use that walking in, and it worked really well. Now, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the settings on it. Like, as far as you have to click through all of them to get back to where you want to be, or switch from red to white, you have to go through all the settings of it. But overall, that's by far the best headlamp that I've used for a red light, because it's so bright going in, and then you can dim it down to when you go to climb up a tree, and you still keep that night vision then from the beginning. Because, like, when you do use a white light, the argument is that, you know, deer aside, you get rid of that night vision. It takes your eyes a while to adjust and to be able to get back to it, where that red light helps you with doing that. But yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts with it. Yeah, we've all kind of done that with the white light situation, and that seems to be. I remember when I don't remember if I had a video or something, and people were like, "Use a white light when you're walking in." And I was like, "Yeah, I know deer aren't supposed to, see the red lights and everything, but I haven't noticed a problem with it, other than, like you said, gray light is a totally different world. Those deer are alert. They're getting ready. They know the sun's coming up. They put their guard up a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Just I guess didn't mean to go down a rabbit hole with that with you.
No, that's good.
But the tree that you ended up picking out for where you killed your buck, I mean, how did you select the tree? Based off of the terrain, I guess. How far were you from the point, the ridge, the edge? How far back? Was there trails running through it?
This is kind of, because of how gradual the point is, it's kind of hard to say how close to the edge of the hill I was, I guess. But I guess my reasoning there was, there was a scrape there in the spring, and just looking at the way the trails were, and there's one big hemlock right close by too, and sometimes I think they're kind of like magnets for deer as they're walking through areas, just something different, just a point of interest, and it seems like they kind of get funneled towards things like that. And so I was set up maybe 20, 30 yards from that big hemlock, and if that big hemlock wasn't there, and that scrape still was, and I seen the trails the way they were, and just the way the terrain was in the depression, I probably would have still been set up pretty close to there. But having the hemlock there too, it was just an added feature that I think made it better. It's kind of hard to answer that just because of how gradual the terrain was.
But I think the hemlock was a good. I mean, I think that's a good answer, and that's something that is only something, again, you pick up on from doing it a lot and being out there in the woods. But especially when you're looking at something like the area you were in, a lot of it looked the same, as far as, like we said, there's a lot of edge that came together there, but in that particular spot within 100 yards, that was the only different type of tree, really.
Yeah, and there was a few small hemlocks there too, like maybe 10 feet tall. So I don't know if it made a difference, but he kind of came through right where I thought they would, within 10 yards.
And that was your first hunt out of or second hunt out of a saddle, right?
Yeah, yep. And I forget what I was going to say there. Oh, there wasn't a lot of trees to pick from, I guess, just because of how it was a very diverse forest right there, where you had trees from 3 feet tall to 50 feet tall, right? So as far as getting shooting opportunities, that was like one of the few spots I thought I could get it to.
Yeah. And then, so I did want to just ask you about this before we get into actually how the deer came in and everything, but usually, I've talked about hunting from a saddle before, and mentioned about practicing and getting comfortable with your gear. Now, you spent some time in the summer with me. You said you wanted to learn, add this to your arsenal, especially with this spot being a ways back in, being able to be a little bit lighter. And you were learning, you came and you were practicing things, and then you were kind of fine-tuning your yard and shooting things. But you were borrowing one of my saddles until your Timber Ninja Ultimate came in the mail. You ended up getting it the night before.
Yeah, I think so.
and pulling it out and just going to hunt out of it. I was like, well, that didn't take too long to get a testimony out of that.
Yeah. And the saddle, I'm sold on them. They definitely have a place in every deer hunter's arsenal, I think, where I think I still prefer hunting and shooting out of a hang-on or even a climber. Just being able to stand up, and I'm just more comfortable that way. But after I was still pretty uncomfortable when I shot that deer, even though I practiced with your saddle quite a bit.
Yeah.
And there's points where I was like, this deer's going to walk right by me and I'm not going to get a shot, and I ended up pulling it off. But once we went I started hunting New York a little bit afterwards, and you went up with me for a while, and so did Uncle Mike. Up there, I got a lot more comfortable with it, where I was like, okay, I feel pretty efficient. I can shoot almost every angle out of the tree now. And it's so nice carrying a saddle and a few sticks versus a hang-on setup, like I have been doing. So I'm sold on it. I'll definitely be hunting out of a saddle quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think it would, at some point, I'll have you try out a bigger platform, too. Helps you with the standing ability when you can get one where you can actually stand on, too, kind of like a tree stand. I started with the small, well, you have one of my platforms, and it's nice for the actual saddle hunting part, but for the ability to be able to kind of stand up and lean against a tree sometimes and shoot from that. Because even being hunting out of a saddle as long as I have, the times that I've shot out of most of them, I've been standing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, or the weak side shot. It seems like none of them are ever like the perfect leaning shot out of the saddle that you dream is going to happen. It's always like a goofy type of opportunity. But once you get used to them, they're so nice to be able to carry.
And probably, besides carrying them in, just how lightweight they are, my favorite part is you can have setups where you hide behind the tree instead of being fully exposed in front.
Well, I was going to ask you about this, this deer, this hunt that you killed your buck on. Did that come in, you think that had a play as far as, were you behind a tree on his approach, or what side of the tree did he come in?
Yeah, I would have been behind the tree when I shot. I don't think that was a huge factor in this hunt, but depending on the angle of him coming in, it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think with his setup, the way it was, he had so much cover, kind of the way it was, and with the deer coming below you there a little bit, he'd have to it was tough for me to find the tree that Mason was in, and obviously if he's a body up there, that would make a little bit of a difference, but yeah, it was a super cool spot. Like I did enjoy that. So go back, you said the deer just came in the way you thought, but explain how that morning kind of all unfolded.
You mean from the time I set up?
Yeah, right. So you were talking about you set up, 45 minutes before it got light, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, so it was the type of morning you dream about as a deer hunter, and for some reason I just had an unreal amount of confidence about that morning, and nice frosty, like probably mid to high 20s type of temperatures for the morning, and nothing was really happening. I don't know what time I shot him, maybe 8:30. Nothing really transpired between first light and 8:30. I don't remember if I heard a grunt or if I heard him break a stick, but I ended up seeing him coming from a ways out. And he walked right up to where that scrape was the previous year. He didn't make a scrape or anything. And I drew back on him on my weak side, and he just never really angled right to where I could get a shot. And I was uncomfortable on my weak side a little bit, but I was good enough. I would have shot if I got the right angle. Then he turned and walked below me from right to left, and I had to let down on my weak side, because I thought he was going to come right below me on my weak side, and I wasn't going to get a shot, until he goes past me. So I'm kind of bitching the saddle setup out, So luckily he stayed below me, which is where I wanted him to walk. So I let down and carefully moved my bow up over the side of the tree, and And he came out, and I drew back, and I was just waiting for an opening. You know, I'm kind of watching in front of him, looking for the most open spot, because like I said, it's, you know, it's a pretty thick setting, you know, and I found a hole, and I just put my pin there and waited for him to walk into it. And I stopped him, and I had a high back of the lung shot, and I just took my time, pulled through my shot, and right where I was trying to settle my pin, I just seen a puff of steam come out, you know, and he ran 50 yards and piled up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, you know, so then I'm texting all you guys, you know, first buck of the season, everybody's pretty jacked up, and I hear something behind me, and another big buck came in, and he did a half circle right around me, so he probably heard this buck crashing around and smelled him, you know, because that buck came in from downwind, so, I mean, as soon as I shot that deer, I could smell him. The one that I shot, you know, so he's pretty stinky, and probably just the way the thermals were at that time coming right up to my tree, I could smell him. He had a pretty strong scent, and this buck just did a circle right around me. Another beautiful, I mean, he wasn't a giant, but he's just a old, heavy, bully type of 8-point, you know.
Yeah.
So I had just a perfect morning. It was awesome.
Yeah, man, that is awesome. And I don't remember now. I think it must have been after the 8-point came through that you called me, because I was in the tree, and I remember I was kind of bitching about, like, why is Mason calling me? He knows I'm hunting. And I forgot that you were off work on that Friday. And I'm like, what is he doing calling me? And I was like, then I'm like, oh, and it like hit me. I'm like, he's off work. And I'm like, he had to have shot a deer. There's only one reason he's calling me right now. So I answered it, and you told me, and I was so fired up, pumped, and I'm like, I'm going to come help. And you're like, no, keep hunting. I'm like, no, I'm coming to help. And I get everything packed up. I'm up and tearing down my tree. I look, I'm standing on my platform, and I disconnected all my ropes on my saddle, and I'm standing free floating. I feel like I was like leaning free floating, like on my platform. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just hugged the tree, and I'm like, all right, settle down. Like, don't do everything so quick. But I was so pumped up and worked up about it. So
yeah, it's what's awesome with us too is especially during archery season, you know, everybody's always so excited for each other and willing to go help, and you know, I've talked to other people. My brother has friends that are big hunters, and you know, there could be the one's a family, is a couple brothers and dad, and if one of them gets a buck, it's like they don't even go help them or celebrate or anything. It's like, oh, good job, have fun getting them out, you know. Or, you know, we're always willing to jump in and help and celebrate, and that's just as good as killing one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I tell people I talk to, you know, my dad and cousins and uncles more during archery season than I do the whole rest of the year combined.
Yeah.
You know, there's something special about that too.
Yeah. There really is. And that but I gotta explain the process of also talking with your dad about coming to help you. I'm trying to coordinate with your dad about coming to help, and as all of our family is, we're very secretive on a lot of things, okay? And your dad's like, all right, we're gonna meet at this time at this place. And then he's like, no. He's like, your truck is too recognizable. We need.
I told you that.
Yeah. And you said that he was going to be that way. And he was. And he's like, nope. We need to park your truck like 20 miles away. We'll go get it. I'm like, are you serious? I was like, I can take it. I said, I can hide it. And he's like, no. Everybody knows your truck. Absolutely not.
Yep.
And it did make sense. I get it. But it was funny where we parked it at. I've had multiple people be like, oh man, Mason must have killed his buck right there, because it was like, no. Like, I know where Mason killed his buck. All right, yeah. You got us. But that was a beautiful deer. I mean, how many points did he end up having? 12.
I call it 12. One maybe isn't. I never measured it.
Yeah.
It's probably right close to that 1 inch mark.
Oh, we never had the buck scoring part for it.
No, we didn't.
Dang.
And it's probably already getting mounted, isn't it?
Not that I know of, but
you didn't even bring it?
I see a bottle of bird dog there. We could have a scoring party here soon.
Yeah. But you didn't bring. You had it and you didn't bring it.
It's at my dad's place.
Oh, okay.
My dad mounts all my bucks for me, so
yeah,
whenever he gets to it.
All right. We'll give you the pass there.
Yep.
And you actually had the worst situation from the standpoint of the first one to shoot a buck means you're going on everybody else's drags, which is fun. Don't get me wrong, but you're on call, like you're expected to be the one that shows up. And typically you don't have a lot of help because other people are hunting in that prime time per se. But when you're the last one, that's when you got everybody coming. And even with mine, it was only 2 weeks later, November 1st, when I shot my buck. But you were tagged out at that time. Uncle Mike was tagged out. You weren't, but you came and helped, and Kurt came and helped too. So I had the whole group. It was like, man, this is easy.
It was a good season as far as we started knocking them down there pretty quick. I kind of got the ball rolling, and then things started happening fast, and we got to go on a lot of pack outs, and it got to the point where my fiance Lauren was like, you're seriously going to go again? And it's like, yeah, I got to go. It only comes around once a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were done.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was one of those years, and things were kind of rolling there. And Dad, you had early on, or in that mid to late October, you had some opportunities that you elected to pass on at that point that I felt like a week or two later you were wishing you wouldn't have.
I just wish they would have came by that time a week or two later. No, I don't regret any of the passes that I've done. I mean, it was, based off my goals that I set for this past year, it just was, they were borderline. That one was borderline. That one, yeah.
I just found that video on my phone the other day. I was watching. I was like, man, that was a great deer.
Yeah, it was a nice buck. But no, I don't regret it. I mean, do I wish it would have come by that last week? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One of that caliber. But no, that early or late October, early season was a lot of encounters. I personally, I credit towards the full moon being in the middle of the October instead of later or into the first week of November. That maybe it turned it on sooner, but that's just my thoughts on it. I know science doesn't back that usually, or the studies that they claim that it doesn't affect them. But my experience is, I think that, that mid month full moon definitely turned things on that third week.
You've logged moon data for a long time,
yeah,
and you see that is pretty consistent
with my action or my activity.
Yeah,
my personal witnesses, talking to other people. That may not be the case, but it may just be my belief that brings these encounters on. I don't know, but it just lines up.
I don't really pay attention to it, but I think the fact that there's so many people that do believe in it, that there's something to it, and even though the science and the radio collar DNA doesn't necessarily say there is a difference, I believe that there has to be. And you look at the radio collar data, it's like, how exactly are they studying that? Is it by miles moved, and is it by time of day?
Yeah, it's the sample rate, but with the full moon though, that's usually when you have your coldest mornings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that may be the cold front because of the full moon.
Yeah,
it may be coincidental.
I don't know if I just read this, or I might have heard it on your podcast with Robbie Denning, where it's like a super high percentage of the trophy fish for each state, like the biggest fish ever caught for a state, is caught within like a few days of a full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like, I think we.
It was on my podcast.
I think it was, but I'm not sure.
That doesn't mean it wasn't. I just don't remember.
But it, I think. I mean, that being said, I think we'd be foolish to say it doesn't affect them in some way.
Right.
Yeah, and you've logged and whether that is correlated with weather patterns, it doesn't matter. That still, if you pay attention to that, it can
if it's affecting the weather patterns, so there's something to it.
Yeah, and I need to pay. I always say that, but I need to pay attention. I pay attention to a lot of data, but I've never paid attention to moon stuff and don't totally understand it at this point. But I know like you said, you've put a lot of emphasis into figuring that out and looking at it, and honestly, just having that confidence alone helps a lot with going in, and I truly 100% believe that. But the weather lined up incredible from really October 14th through the end of October.
Yeah.
There was a few days there that it got warmer, but overall it was seemed like those were the dates to be in the woods.
Yeah, there was you started it off on the 18th. Uncle Mike was the 28th?
27th.
27th?
Or no, the 29th.
29th,
yep.
Okay. And you were the 1st, November 1st. I had encounters on, I think, the 26th.
Yeah.
Yours was...
the one I missed was the 25th.
25th, okay. And I think I had an encounter on the 29th, and then the 2nd. I mean, as far as bucks, I would have shot in the past. That I elected not. Well, one of them I didn't. I would have shot, but he was 60 yards away. That was on the 2nd, I believe. Or no, that was the 30th. That was October 30th. That buck come, and I couldn't get him any closer than 60 yards. But yeah, there was a lot of good encounters that last week of October.
Yeah. I will say it, if we get the weather that lines up and maybe the moon at that time period again, I would trade all my November days to hunt that. Yeah. Just based on the experience I had this year on having that stuff line up. It was just, but I think it also comes down to, I think it's a lot more important to be in the right spots of knowing the areas the bucks like to hang out in, because they're not full on searching or anything at that point. They're still, in their bedding areas per se, or coming back to it, but it keeps them on their feet a little bit longer, and they may start bumping does around and things that keep them, it gives you that opportunity of you might sit in a spot and you might be in the right spot but not see a deer for 3 days. It gives you that opportunity for you to potentially actually see one. Because I had encounters the 17th of October with the big deer that was rubbing the tree and I couldn't get the shot at. The 23rd or the 24th, that I had the one I was at full draw and he didn't step out in the opening. 25th, I missed that one. The 29th, the same day Uncle Mike killed his, is when I had that real big one and my bow was on the ground. And then November 1st is when I ended up shooting. And that wasn't a good movement day by any means. It was just I was on the ground because it was super windy and I ended up, making that happen. But but what about your spots throughout that when you were having those opportunities? What did those look like?
Mostly scrape setups. Community scrapes on 3 of the 4 encounters. But the weather was cold in the mornings, except for that one at 60 yards. It was foggy, which I debated about even getting in there as early as I did because I knew there was going to be fog. But the wind was going to switch at around 11 a.m., and I knew I wouldn't be able to hunt that spot after that because of the wind switch. So I thought, for lack of trying somewhere else, I took the gamble, sometimes you need to do, and it paid off as far as the encounter. Just that I just couldn't get him to come close. He hit the scrape, but I'd set up downwind of the scrape about 60 yards. Because
I remember
usually in these situations, I've had them skirt downwind of the scrape about 30 yards. So I thought I'm going to get right, set myself up for a good encounter here, and he go right to the scrape and hit it.
That was a big deer too.
Yeah, and then he cut up the hill parallel, stayed out at about 60 yards, and I grunted at him, and he stopped and he stared and looked my way. For it seemed like an eternity, probably at least a minute though. It was a good amount of time, and then he started looking. He looked the other way, so I threw another grunt. He looked again. I thought, well, he's going to commit here, And I actually went to full draw, but I had estimate him actually I estimate around 55, but I arranged it later. It was ended up being 60, but so I probably would have shot under him. But I went to full draw. He was perfectly broadside, but I'm thinking he's going to come in. There's no sense taking this chance. It was, I can shoot. I shoot all the time out to 60 to make the 30 and 40 yard shots easy. So I just didn't shoot, and which I'm glad he didn't, because like I said, I would have misjudged the yardage. But then when he finally turned and went, I let down then and started getting more aggressive on the grunt and trying to get him to turn. But he just went away wagging his tail and just never spooked. Just was on a mission. And but yeah, that was I think it was probably in the 40s that morning. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember. But then I guess that other buck you were talking about that was on the earlier one, that was on a community scrape. That was a cold morning. And
this is the buck that you passed?
Yeah, and he come grunt. I heard him grunting. He was grunting. I mean, which was kind of, I thought it was early. It's almost like he was chasing, but he was just on a steady grunt, wasn't chasing. And I didn't have to call or nothing. He come right to the scrape and hit it right in front of me. I went to full draw as he was coming through the brush because he had I thought, decent rack shooter. And but when he popped out at the scrape, I was just looking at him. It's like, it's not what I want right now.
Yep.
And it was still kind of early.
Yeah, and it was early. So I left down, pulled my phone out, and filmed them.
Yeah, it was good video. I would say I just found it the other day. I was going back through some clips, and I was looking for something, and I came across that. I was like, what deer is this? And I was like, oh, that's the one he passed. I was like, man, that was a good-looking deer. But I get it. It's like, and that's why I think there's a, at least for me, and I know it is for you too, a swinging pendulum as far as your goals go. I mean, there's this part of you that you don't want to be done early because you enjoy hunting through the different parts of those seasons and everything. So sometimes there's deer that you would pass on early on that you would 100% shoot later and be able to change on that. But I understand your thought process there. And also, we were joking with Thomas as he was coming in to film. We said that he was the reason that you didn't shoot that deer because he's like, oh no, I hope I didn't. Thomas, he's so nice. Like, I hope I didn't screw that up. I'm like, oh yeah, Thomas, you didn't shoot that because I told him that he had to shoot a buck on film. Yeah, which was just, again, complete joke. We're just joking about it, but November, that was kind of a tougher time for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say tougher. I just I got into, I always have 5, 6, 7 different areas, and I had 3 target bucks in 3 different areas this year. So I ended up, I think I jumped around a little bit too much, as far as not concentrating on one area. I look back at the target bucks that I have killed over the years, and it seems like I settle and I stick with them, and regardless of what's going on in other areas. And I think this year, as far as reflecting back, if I was to do something different, I think I would have just picked one of them bucks and stayed on it. I mean, you got to have have multiple choices just in case something does go on one of your areas that's out of your control, either hunting pressure or logging activity or who knows what it may be. But I really didn't have any interference in any of those 3 areas, but except for myself.
Did your son happen to say any of that to you during that time?
Yeah, you might have brought it up after the fact.
Did you were you mad at me saying that?
No, not at all.
No, I'm just kidding. It's one of those. It is one of those things, though. At any point, I feel like I can make a better decision for each of you, as you can make a better decision for me because you're on the outside looking in. When you're always involved in something, well, Mason's out of the picture. I'm not giving him any advice. He's got it, but it's easier to look at someone else's situation and give advice on it because you're seeing it. It's like, oh
Well,
man, you know.
it's based off your goals too.
Yeah.
If my goal wasn't just one of those $3, I had opportunities at every spot I went to as far as those 3 areas throughout my hunt, but it just wasn't what I wanted this past year.
Yep.
Other years, would I have shot some of them bucks? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and I have. I mean, but it just, it comes down to your goals. What's going to make you happy? And I had the time to. I had the time to dedicate as far as my workload at work, to where I could take some time and hunt, this rut. And so it was, I was, based off of my goals. The only thing I would have done different is concentrate on one area, one target buck more. Unless something really was, okay, I can't hunt this target buck for whatever, because of the wind, and I'm just, maybe I would jump to another area that day, but I was flipping coins because all 3 were huntable.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I wouldn't say it was a tough November. I mean, I had, like I said, it was, I actually had encounters with, I could have shot my first bear, well, my second opportunity at a bear, but I had 2 bear come through that one morning. There was that cub that was, I bet it was only 40 pounds, and just left it walk by me, and then an hour later, a bigger one, which probably was the mom, but it looked like to me it was only 70 or 90 pounds. I'm not going to shoot one that small, and then I filmed it. And
that was a mature bear.
I played it back, and it's probably 140 pound, 150 pound bear.
Right.
Yeah. I know. We were all like, I don't know if I would have done that. But.
Yeah. And then, I don't know why. It just didn't look that big from the, when he come right underneath me.
Yeah. No, I understand that. And I guess when I said it was a tough November, I guess I just looked at it from the standpoint of everybody was on a tear through late October, and then no one in the family was killing during the time when we normally are killing at. So it seemed, I don't have as much experience. I was sitting on a couch.
Yeah. Well, even your dad. I mean, your dad, he had encounters in that first, second week in November too, that he passed on some bucks, and so we were having encounters. It's just that most of you guys were tagged out after shooting them small bucks. No, you guys got every one of you guys, Uncle Mike's, yours, and Mason's, I would have shot without a problem.
Yeah. No, I gotta stop doing that. I had a guy comment on a YouTube video, said it was very constructive, but it's true. He said, you think after 400 some episodes that you wouldn't, after every time someone says something, you go, yeah, no. And I do that now, but now that he said that and I've read it, I catch myself doing it. It's a good thing. Like, I'm glad he said it, because I'm going to try to stop doing that. But I just, every time you said it, I'm like, yeah, no.
It was a weird year for me, for sure, shooting one as early as I did, because normally I'm one of the last guys out there. Everybody else is tagged out, and I'm out there in the cold shivering, up in my tree, being all upset that I can't get anything. And this year, everybody's archery hunting, and it's November, and I did a lot of fish. I did a lot of fishing this year, and it's like, this feels so wrong. I just want to be in a tree stand. But I'm, like I said, I'm glad it worked out. It was nice eating eggs and bacon in the morning and not rushing out the door. And
hey, we got to go hunt New York, and go do that,
which was something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah, and it was fun. It was fun. We didn't have any pressure. I mean, we still hunted hard, but it wasn't. We definitely enjoyed ourselves a little more than we would on a traditional hunt. When I say that, I mean we just didn't. You didn't have that pressure on your shoulders of like. Really, it was a new area. Our expectations were kind of low, of just like, let's figure it out and get out there and see it. But that was fun. That was a fun few days. I think it was a 3-day stretch. We went and hunted, 2-day stretch, something like that. And you went up a few other times, but
yeah, no, it was fun. It was really refreshing going somewhere new. You have no history, no trail cameras, and just going, trying to figure it out. It's one of those things, and it was an area too where, seem just as likely to, not just as like, this is a bad way to say it, but I was going to say it's the type of woods you almost think like, if Sasquatch exists, this is the kind of place you're going to see him in. It just kind of just pretty interesting type of terrain and forest.
Yeah. It was, I'd found a spot. I'd found what I thought was some pretty good spots, but it takes a while to learn an area, even stuff that's similar as far as terrain. It's like, okay, big ridges, some oak trees, some other, different types of hardwoods, some softwoods, stuff there, but there was no clear cut. So it's just, big timbered type of woods, and trying to figure out what big sign looks like and in those areas, and what a mature buck is going to look like in those areas. And I ended up seeing a couple of nice 2-year-old 8-points, and one I passed that came by, and I felt good about some of my setups, but we really need to get up there this spring and just spend a day to, a Saturday or something and walk and cover some more ground. I do have a camera up there now too. I did leave a camera up, a cell cam. I put a Tacticam on top of this ridge, the only spot that I had service on a nice scrape, and I only had one good buck on it throughout. Now I think November 8th or 9th or something, I think I put up that camera, and I didn't have much what I thought I would have there, but that doesn't mean that they're not there. It's just one camera.
You just got to figure it out.
I just got to spend more time there and figure it out. But back to you, Dad, a little bit. So you had, then you went through archery season, and then was there anything else in archery season I'm missing? Any encounters or anything you think that were good learning things to talk about?
I think, there was an encounter when Thomas and I were going into one of my pre-hung sticks for a saddle set. He had his saddle and sticks with him, and mine was already pre-hung. And on our way in, we bumped some deer, not too far from the truck. It was still dark. There was a buck chasing, grunting. You could hear him. We just hunkered down and kind of waited till daylight to get a look at it. It didn't sound like a deep grunt, but just wanted to see, and you never know if there's another one there also dogging these doe. So we waited until it got gray light, and they did move off, but we did get eyes on it, and it was a smaller buck. And then we started moving, continuing on our plan. But now we're kind of taking it easy because now it's getting daylight, and said, well, might as well hunt to the tree now, and had another encounter. And it was actually a nice buck. Actually, Thomas sent us the footage here recently. Yeah. He was going through some of his clips, and it was
real good buck.
Yeah. Did you see the video?
Mm-hmm.
And in hindsight, I should have set up in that area. I'm thinking. I mean, that's just. But for that morning, I guess it wasn't practical because I'd have to go another half a mile to get my setup, my stick, since I had nothing with me. And go back, where I think in the future I may carry my sticks and platform regardless if I have preset sticks, just in case something like this happens. Where if it doesn't, you just leave them at the base of the tree and you do your normal setup on your, because the only reason I pre-hung these sticks was to be quiet, easier getting in or slip in. Yep. And so I think in the future, one of the things that I was, thinking about was, after that encounter was if I would have had a platform and sticks, we would have set up on that top. Because those two encounters were within 300-400 yards of each other. So things were happening on that hill.
Must have been a hot doe or something there.
Something was going on, but instead we continued on and dropped down into the valley, headed up the other ridge where I had my preset sticks. And we did have a small 8 come through. I think Thomas filmed that day too, but I think as far as a learning, I think I will start carrying my full setup regardless if I have preset sticks, or a platform, and just in case something like that happens.
Yeah, and if you're gonna hunt, that's a hard situation where you were planning on being there before light, and typically it just.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
I think that was one of those situations. It's kind of tough to. I think you were just the cards you were dealt. Things just led to be that way. But that buck was nice.
Yeah.
That footage was. I mean, you said it was a nice buck, but Mason was saying, I don't know if he's exaggerating or not. And I said, Mason, he wouldn't do that. So, but yeah, that was a really nice looking buck there. I have to comment on some things that Thomas had said about the experience here too. Was he's like, hunting with your dad, you know, and I can't do a Thomas voice to the deep Southern accent, but he's like he's a bull, you know. He's like he'll climb tree limbs and go up there, and he's like oh my gosh, I was cracking up because you had this. I know the tree. I've been there with you before 10 years ago.
He was one of the sets that I took him to. I have a hang on in a hemlock, buried in this hemlock, and it's probably the bottom platform. It's probably it's all of. I mean, it's the end of my pull rope, so I think I have a 25. I think I buy 50-foot of paracord and just cut it in half, and so it's right around 24 feet, probably at the bottom of the platform. But you got to climb. I have no sticks. You got to climb the limbs up, and I set the set up every year, and I rip it out. Usually week of Thanksgiving, I tear the set down. But over the years, these bottom branches were kind of dead to begin with, but you just got to be careful. And I explained to Thomas, that morning, I says, when we climb this tree, watch what I do. I'll go up first and just make sure you grab the same branches I did. And you got to keep your feet close to the base of the tree where the branch comes out on the branch. Because some of these branches are only an inch in diameter. And I remember I got up there, I pulled my pack up, and I brought his platform. I got his platform set, and I gave him the flash, like, okay, you can come up now. And I'm just finishing things up, and I just hear crash, 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 crash. And I heard him shine my light down, and I'm expecting to see him laying on the ground, but he's still standing down there. And then I thought, okay. And then I didn't want to say anything, as far as voice, so I didn't say nothing. I'm just kind of waiting, and I see him starting to come back up, and there was a couple more cracks there. And eventually he made it up, and he gets up there, and the first thing I asked him, I says, are we going to be able to get back down? He goes, I'm not sure. I think so. But then Alex and I went in there a few days later, and I took a stick in, and just for the bottom. But it took two of us to get the strap around it, because that's a double hemlock, and those are big hemlocks. But yeah, that was I guess that'd be a learning curve thing too there.
Yeah. Oh, that was funny here, and that was the first morning I think Thomas was filming with you. It's the first time you have a camera guy with you.
Yeah,
he's crashing through all the branches, and he felt terrible. He's like, and Thomas is a good hunter as too, and he's like, your dad's just a different breed. It was funny, but
no, it was. I enjoyed. It was definitely uncomfortable as far as that week with Thomas and Alex, but
uncomfortable as far as having a camera on.
Yeah. It just, but towards the end of the week, it started. As far as my comfort zone started getting better, but it's because you're always trying to figure these sets. Because I always said one person's too many in a tree, yourself, and then let alone have two people. But these guys are experienced, and they did very well. I mean, they did very well as far as their setups and their concealment, and so it was no issues with that. It was just it just made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that makes it tougher, but yeah, well, people will be able to see that here later in in beginning of summer when that ends up coming out. But last thing before we wrap this one up, going into rifle season, when you ended up shooting your buck, going back, it ended up being the same spot same area you had that encounter with that big one on the ground with Thomas on that top. Because I went in with you the day before gun season, and we'd picked out a spot. It was a pretty good funnel, I thought, but you ended up not seeing a deer there, or the wind was messing.
Yeah,
bad,
I did.
it?
Yeah, it was for our first day of rifle, and it was very cold, that morning. And I was in a climber, and I was up, to end of my pull rope, and the wind. I knew the wind was going to be a little sketchy to begin with there, but I thought I would be high enough that it would blow over if they were coming in below me. And about, I guess it was a little bit before noon, a coyote was coming, just the way I expected a deer to come. And I'm watching him, and I'm thinking, well, here's, I'm going to get a shot at a coyote because I'm not going to pass that up. And I'm following him with my rifle, and he gets out to about 100 yards, and he just stops, and his nose goes up. And all of a sudden, he turns and starts running the way he come. Then he stopped after going about 20 or 30 yards. He made a stop, and I did take a shot, which I ended up going down later, and there was fur there. But so that, to me, I'm thinking, man, if that was a buck, with that same scenario happen, and maybe going to be able to pull the shot off. And, he didn't even get below me, and I did expect some to come from that other angle as well. Those ones I would never even see I couldn't see out past 60 or 70 yards. So I'm thinking I might be killing myself before I even see the deer of my scent. So they end up tearing down at, I think it was 1 o'clock. I made a move and went up on top, and where the wind was more consistent. And that's where the second day I went back in there that morning and ended up killing the buck I killed in rifle there.
Yeah, which he was, and you'd said that. Well, that day before gun season, we did walk there a little bit, and they were feeding on some black cherries.
Yep.
And you were thinking, like, man, maybe I should come up here. But the first setup was a lot based on pressure, and then you didn't have pressure.
No, there was no pressure. I didn't hear another shot. I didn't see another boot track coming out that night. Where other years when I'm in that area, you were
literally set up based off of how other humans were going to be hunting there, and there just wasn't other humans. So.
It didn't happen.
So and then you called me that morning that you had shot. Was he feeding? Is that when you?
Yeah, he was coming through, just feeding.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was a perfect scenario. Nice buck came in, got to bring the sled in because there was a bunch of snow.
Oh yeah,
and sleds make it so nice.
Yeah.
When you have snow like that, especially if you have like old logging roads or something that you can pull them on. The jet sled, is that what you had? That's the kind.
It's a knockoff, yeah.
Yeah, but that type of
that
deep dish kind of sled.
Yeah, that worked well.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I've used sleds in the past, but this year I feel like because we had a bunch of snow, we used sleds a decent amount during gun season. Uncle Francie used one for his and everything, and it was that was a good move. Those worked well when you have snow for sure. I mean,
other than that, we probably would have packed it out if it wasn't for the sled.
Yeah, oh yeah, that would not have been a nice drag normally, even though it was on, like, there was a logging road that you could get to and get your way back to the truck. It still would have been pretty terrible. It's just one of those long, gradual uphill.
Yeah.
Just nothing looks bad, but it's bad because it's the whole time of that.
Yeah. It's always kind of special getting them on a nice snowy day like that too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that was awesome. It was good to see that. Gun season was incredible. Everybody, it was the best year I think we've had in camp for gun seasons and that I can remember. And well,
like you mentioned earlier, I mean, it seemed like this whole area, it was a lot of nice bucks killed during rifle season, and a lot of people's target bucks.
Yep. Yeah, just about all my deer. Or I say my deer. The deer that I was pursuing are dead. There still are some that have made it, and there always are. So you just gotta get out there and find them. I was definitely a little bit throwing some fits myself there for a little bit and being like, I was happy for the people that got them, but it was just like, man, I felt like I really had a good chance at these deer next year, but That's what it is, and that's what happens.
Well, the snow definitely is to the hunter's advantage. We haven't had much of that during rifle in the past years, so
Yep.
That's what I think made this year so successful for a lot of people is we haven't had a lot of snow for hunting season in the last few years. We've had easy winters, which really helped with antler growth, I think, and the health of the deer herd. And then this year we got phenomenal hunting conditions like the entire rifle season.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the deer health as far as coming out of this winter.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been it hasn't been really that bad until the last couple of weeks. As far as there's been snow, but they have been getting down to the leaf, the root systems, the fern bulbs. But just this last couple of weeks, we've been getting an ice crust, and they're walking on top of it, and they're having a hard time right now getting through it.
Yeah, that's. I mean, we're seeing, herds grouping up and stuff.
Yeah, they're really yarding up now.
And they're hitting the briars hard, and because you said they can't dig into the ground. Where I think in January, even though we've had snow since late November, basically straight through, but we never had that big thaw out where things melted and then froze over again,
right?
So that they couldn't dig to the ground. But now that we had that there at the beginning of February. And now that's where it gets really hard on the deer, in my opinion. Yeah. I think the cold weather in general isn't that hard on them. It's when you get that spot where they can't feed all the places.
Yeah, hopefully it's going to let up here this coming week and get in the mid-30s, some of it, and start softening up the ground for them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks, guys. We're gonna record another episode here, going through some shed hunting stories, which will be fun to get to do something a little bit different. I thought it was an idea kind of came up with, but thanks for coming on and chatting, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep,
appreciate it.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.